here's the thing is reading a little bit about the backstory here is they want to kind of do a Batman Begins, because Batman Begins was successful and they want to do that kind of a Batman Begins with Spider-Man. The only problem, one of the difficulties I have with that idea is the three Spider-Man films prior to Batman Begins versus the four Batman films prior to the Batman Begins is Spider-Man already had an origin story done. Batman, however, the films were not around his origin. So right there, there's 30 minutes to an hour that was really, in my opinion, wasted on a film because there was no, until you see the second one, it actually ties in, which is fine. I give him that credit to it. But I think it's wasted because I think people already knew the origin of Spider-Man and you needed to kind of focus on other things. I'll give him the positives because there's more positives than negatives about these two.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I feel like the origin story is what was missing from the new Tom Holland movies, because it's that connection to the character and seeing them develop into, you know, into Spider-Man and struggling with their identity with Peter Parker and like versus like juggling that and Spider-Man. I don't know, not to cut you off, but I just think that's interesting that like I do wish we got a Spider-Man 3 so that there was more that we could see Andrew Garfield do, but I don't necessarily think that time was wasted in my personal
view. The only reason why I say that, I think it is because here's the thing is, like you said, if you go back to, if you take what Sam Raimi does, he's trying to capture that 70s, 80s Spider-Man. And then this one's kind of capturing that 90s, 21st century Spider-Man. This one is.
Yeah.
And I think it's called the Ultimate Spider-Man. So they're based on two different types of Spider-Mans. So I give him that, except for, like I said, I the heart that's there is there. I mean, there's reasoning behind what they do. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, what I would do, I understand the origin, but I would have not done it in a full story. I would have like done it through like still pictures or through like a montage, like something like that. And then we could get the idea. I just feel like, yeah, it's connected to the second one, granted, because of spiders and the foot and then blood and all that kind of thing. I understand that. I understand that, but you didn't need that time length to explain that. So here's my positives. In my opinion, I think Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. Now, as far as the best Peter Parker, he is not. And I'll use this terminology, and you know I do, Lucas, is too cool for school. And, you know, like we said, you and I, we're not too cool for school, right? Because we're in that genre of people who are not the norms, you know. And Peter Parker is not normal. He's one of us. And so and that's the reason why those books are so popular and sell so much. When you get to Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, he's too cool to be Peter Parker. That's the only downside. And that's a little picky thing to be in there, but when he is Spider-Man, even though he does a dad joke in the second one, he's still a charismatic and true to form comic book Spider-Man. And when he's Spider-Man, I want to watch him when he's Spider-Man. When he's Peter Parker, or when he ever takes the mask off, and he's a good-looking guy, don't get me wrong, but I don't want him to be Peter Parker. I don't care about Peter Parker in these films. I care more about Spider-Man. And that's sad because Peter Parker is a large part of Spider-Man. Having said that, I hate Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy.
Really? Why?
I think here's my biggest issue is like when you're, because here's the thing is like, obviously, if you go back to the Spider-Man comic books, he's meant to be with Mary Jane, but you know how romance works. It's like when Sierra and I watch Korean romances, they do this thing, you know, they're supposed to be together, right? Well, they write a story where it doesn't look like the two people are to be together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that Mary Jane and not Spider-Man, Peter Parker are going to be together. So the comic books wrote Gwen Stacy in there to make it think that Mary Jane and Peter Parker are not to be together. They don't even attempt to do that in this because the love interest of these films are Gwen Stacy. The problem is, as someone who read Spider-Man growing up, we all know what the fate of Gwen Stacy is. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you know what the fate of Mary Jane and Peter Parker is. They get married. We know what the fate of Gwen Stacy is. I'm not going to reveal it to you, but you nerds out there who read Spider-Man books, you know, until the end of this, we'll spoil that for you. We know the fate of Gwen Stacy. And so does it hurt the character? Yes, it does, because we know in our hearts that she's not the true love of Peter Parker. But then again, Emma Stone too comes off as a pretentious little witch that I have to imagine myself, why in the world would he even be in love with this person? Because I understand why the world falls in love with Kirsten Dunst, Mary Jane. I can sit there and say, oh, I get it. I understand. She's that girl on Twitch that you can relate to, you like, she's fun, she's happy, she's smiling. This person, I would punch in the face.
Oh my God.
If she was
That's
my
so
Starbucks
harsh.
barista, if she was my Starbucks barista, I would boycott that Starbucks and go across to Starbucks where Ash is working, who I love as my barista. There you go. That's my opinion. It's wrong, but I'm sorry. She's terrible. I described her one time when I first reviewed these films as the actual villain of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I had no idea you felt this way. This is all news to me.
It's just like I said, and I think too, this new version I got, Amazing Spider-Man 2, they've actually edited some of it because they knew they went too far with the first time they did it. And we won't get into Aunt May, but as you know, Aunt May gets younger as we go on. When we do the fourth reboot, Aunt May will be 20 years old. And then the fifth reboot, she'll be a teenager raising Peter Parker. So she gets younger as the timeline goes on. All right, so where do we begin with Amazing? You want to start off with Amazing Spider-Man, and like I said,
I don't know. I feel like you threw out a bunch that we need to unpack here. Like, that's pretty intense. Like, I think
there's more positives really than negatives.
Like all of the things that were thrown at her pretty well. I mean, she was trying to get a scholarship to like this Harvard-esque school.
Oxford,
she loses
which is a real
her
school
dad,
in England.
Like, right, but like all of, and like she's also struggling with like knowing that she's not supposed to be in communication with Peter, and that her dad didn't want her to have any communication with Peter, so he's struggling with, I don't know. I just think that's pretty intense that you like just like her. It is
because here's the thing about it is, it's like I told my niece when, after I watched it the first time, it's like I'm sitting here fighting Rhino. The last thing I could care about is your stupid scholarship to Oxford. I'm dying here, okay? And you're worried about this. That to me is, like when you have that red alert psycho bitch.
Oh my God.
That's where I have a hard time, because it robs the intensity and it robs the danger of it. And granted, this film is very lighthearted, and I love that part of it, because this is not Batman. Batman's very deep and dark and gothic, and you can relate. Peter is more, and Spider-Man is more light-hearted and fun, and I see a lot of that funness in this. But like at the beginning where she's like doing this tour thing, she is cold as ice and mean and heartless and feels like the world needs to be serving everything to her on a platter, like she deserves everything. And I'm sitting here, that's not how I want to introduce my hero, Peter Parker. And again, let's go back to like Peter Parker. Let's go back to Amazing Spider-Man. Peter Parker is a nerd. He's a geek. He's a dweeb. He's everything that we love about the Spider-Man films. He's the connection between the dork that is us and Spider-Man. The problem is Andrew Garfield comes off Peter Parker as cool Modi, and he is like the coolest dude in the world. And granted, that's fine, but you know, again, that's the reason why it's so hard to. Reason why I say the origin stories are wasted, because here's the thing, I'll give him a benefit. Number one, okay, because it's Ultimate Spider-Man, we introduced Peter Parker's parents' origins. That's fine. I like that. Okay, because it gives us something to look at that the other films did not explore, because this is new Spider-Man, that's old Spider-Man, right? Good on you. But that's where I said, okay, you get the Peter Parker parents' origin at the beginning, that opens the film up. Great. It establishes how he becomes with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Then I would do the opening credits for 2 to 3 minutes, have your Coldplay song or whatever, and show in a montage of how he became Spider-Man. Got me? So like you got the credits going and you like some Coldplay going, I wanna be a hero. You know, he's kissing Mary Jane, whatever, and he meets Gwen Stacy, blah, blah, blah. And it, you know, we get this kind of thing, what's going on, right? And then go to him over the city doing his thing. Because in 3 to 5 minutes through the Coldplay song or whatever you choose, depends what fans you're going to go say, you know, you've explained everything, you know what I'm saying? So that's the reason why I think 30 minutes of, and the only thing I would explain is the webs. And of course, if you're a Marvel person, you know that anything that requires technology and money is funded by.
I don't want to get it wrong.
No, you're not going to get it wrong. Who's the only rich person in Marvel that's a superhero?
Stark Industries.
Exactly. Stark's funds everything. It doesn't matter if you go the
But
Fantastic.
we don't explore that in the Andrew Garfield movies.
No, because it was copyrighted. Sorry, but that's the truth.
Ah.
See, this is Sony, and here's the thing. You got to think about this as a person who understands money and understands you're trying to keep your copyright status. This was their idea to keep it as long as they can, because they knew that it eventually was going to go back to Marvel. So that opening, now that I've explained why I would get rid of the origin story and all that, what's your take on all that? I mean, we kind of got a little taste of it.
I think that's fair. I think we could have explored more about, you know, since didn't get a third movie, we could have used that time to explore more about either Peter or Spider-Man. So,
yeah. Well, heck,
rather than,
you know, why Gwen Stacy is so cold. I'm sorry. Okay.
I don't know. I'm really excited to hear that you have such a powerful opinion about this movie.
Villain. I love the villain. I like Kirk Connors. What do you think?
Huh?
Kirk Connors. Don't you like the villain in this?
Yeah, I do. He felt more believable because it seemed like he had like I don't want to say they don't all have like a real motive, but he had an understandable motive. Like, made sense how he could spiral into a villain.
I heard people said they had problems, but I was like, no. And I'll be honest with you, if I did my Spider-Man movie, he would be one of the top ones, because if you read the comic books, man, he would kick Spider-Man's rear all the time. I mean, because the thing you got to think about, because you cut off his arm, it's going to grow back. You cut off his tail, it's going to grow back. So he was pretty bad, and then he was awesome. He was an awesome villain. And we'll get into the other ones later. I've got some pictures I want to show you, but I give him that. That's a bing, give him a score on that. Number one, picking a good villain. I didn't even problem with the actor. Combining Oscorp, bing, good for you. I think Sony had the rights to the Oscorp because that was already established in the first 3 films, which is, again, I wish they would have got more establishment of Norman and Harry Osborn, but I guess they felt those were already done enough in the first 3, right?
Yeah, I felt robbed of their friendship. They just kind of dropped him in and they were like, oh, hey, old buddies.
Yeah, well, that's the second one, and we'll get into that. I personally, that's one of the things I did like is I like Andrew Garfield's and his chemistry.
Yeah.
Because
I wish we got a little more of it though, because I like Harry in both of the films. I like the character a lot. I don't know why, but I really do. But I really like this take on Harry so much more because it's more
definitely
imminent. To whereas the first James Franco Harry seemed a little more crybaby. I do what I want, rich boy.
Yeah,
which I love him too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it would. I'd be honest. Their chemistry was better than I'll say other people on the film, but that to me, when Harry Osborn and that's second one, I hate skipping over that, but when they got on the screen together, my eyes just lit up because they were so good together. And I almost thought about Japanese girls just sitting there writing a little, yaoi thing about them too, because they look so much like yaoi boys. Like they're sitting there like going, oh yeah, and they're just like writing it together and they're drawing on deviant art and everything.
Oh my gosh.
I just could see it. It was working. It was really, really good. Great romance there. No pun intended. So where were we? Okay, let's go back to the Amazing Spider-Man. So let's just get it out of the way like a band-aid. So Emma Stone and Garfield have romantic connection, and actually I like them better in the first one than the second one. But still, it's hard. And I like that they picked Gwen Stacy. Obviously, you got to get people away from the first 3, and I think that was what they were dealing with. Well, whatever, they were probably sitting there. Stanley, well, Stan, didn't he have other love interests? Yes, he did. He had Betty Brant. He had Gwen Stacy. He has Mary Jane. So it's just common sense that you would pick her. But the problem is, like I said, being Spider-Man fans, we all knew what happened with Gwen Stacy. So that was a big struggle. I think that was a very hard thing to pick. Having said that, I mean, it was tolerable in some cases, some of their romance, whatever. But having said that, I love Dennis Leary as the father of Gwen Stacy because he was so New York that it just really worked for me. So Ghost Dad and prior Ghost Dad, Captain Dad were okay with me. And that I like. I'll be honest with you, I kind of like Dennis Leary's chemistry with Emma Stone than I did with Andrew Garfield's and Emma Stone's chemistry. I got the father and daughter thing really good. It worked for me. Did it work for you?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And they also like played to comedy too with it sometimes.
That's what beautiful thing having Dennis Leary in there.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing that really was kind of a downside was when Parker is trying to explain the lizard to Dennis Leary, it
Yeah.
kind of just fell to, because you had serious scenes coming up, and it kind of hurt the thing with it. But it's like somebody said, it's just a hard thing to try to overcome with it. And again, explain to people the motivation of a lizard a little bit, because it is, it's hit and miss with me. I mean, I like the fact he had a reason to be upset. Let's be honest with you, because I think it's more of a revenge at Peter's father.
I'm kind of foggy on this, but I
Yeah,
know
me too.
that they were working together on this formula for some kind of genetic modification to enhance cellular regeneration by splicing genes of different species.
You said celery. I was thinking like celery and carrots.
Cellular like.
Okay,
but
cellular. I get what you're saying.
I don't know. Big words. Words are hard, but
celery.
Celery regeneration. But Peter's father runs off with the finished, or I guess unfinished code.
Right.
And where we take it from there, it gets kind of foggy with his actual.
Here's what I think. I think I was fine with the revenge on Oscorp, because obviously they fired him. And then number two, with Peter's father, because he could have, put his arm together, obviously. So there's a lot of anger there. If he would have threatened to blow up the Oscorp building, that would be a good climax, whatever. Threatening the entire city of New York is kind of a little lame.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I think that when with each dose of this serum he had created, I think it made him kind of alter his mind. You know what I mean? Like not thinking as clearly and more thinking just irrationally and big, and because he just kept wanting more of this serum. He kept wanting to be, this lizard guy. Whereas at the first dose, he didn't know what it was going to do. He thought it was going to be something normal, just regrow his hand. But as we get deeper into it and indulging into this serum, I think it just really changes his mind altogether.
Yeah. All right. So let's just get into the fight scene. That's where I'm kind of like, I didn't care much for it, but it's there. I mean, any other time I like the Spider-Man, but I wasn't crazy about the Spider-Man lizard standoff. What did you think about the standoff?
I wasn't as into the standoff. I feel like there wasn't, I don't know how to explain. The fighting just wasn't as personal? I don't know how to. I like the aspects of Peter Parker doing the detective work and finding Lizard Man better than the fights.
Yeah, and I like that. And we'll get into the second one. I like the science stuff that they added, which was really neat. And we'll get into that as well. Whether or not, if I agree with some of the science, it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that they attempted to put science in there. So with the first one, like you said, I did like the fact, like when he's hanging in the sewer and because if you know spiders, the way they figure something is in their territory is they have this thing on the web. And I thought that was a unique and very good visual that we're seeing. And if you didn't get it, go study biology right now. Anyways, with that being said, like I said, there's this big James Bond, I guess, ending and all that kind of thing. But it is, and spoilers alert on this first one, we get the promise from Dennis Leary's character that Peter should not see because it's just going to hurt Gwen Stacy. So, which is the ending there, the death scene, and it is very emotional. It's probably the best part towards the ending is when Dennis Leary is dying. And it's not because we want to see Dennis Leary dying, except for that when he was doing the I'm an a-hole song. That's when I wanted him to die. But he's dying here. And and it's kind of emotional at the same time, whether it should have been written. Was it okay to be written in this movie? I mean, is it fair? The dialogue of Dennis Leary's character, is that fair?
I feel like they needed it in order to set up for the second movie.
Okay.
Like, I feel like they didn't know where to go with the second movie, and without, as you said, Ghost Dad.
Yeah.
Because he was so important in the second movie, and he was,
And the beautiful thing too is you didn't have to refilm. You just show clips of him just going. Keep on seeing him.
It was crazy, but it also felt like it felt real because it seemed like Peter was struggling with something internally that was very traumatic. Like, it made sense that he would feel so strongly about this promise that he made.
Yeah, that, like I said, I'm okay with. I got no problem with that ending. My biggest issue is, like I said, I'm going to destroy New York City with this, thing that you see generic villains do all the time, some sort of gas that we didn't really explain. That's the only thing I wish. I would be okay, like, if he took Oscorp, well, I'm going to blow up Oz Corporation. Well, it makes sense. They did you wrong. They fired you, blah, 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 You going after New York City, dude, bro, you really didn't need to do that. Hey, what did New York City do to you? It's like, that's what we felt. It's like
he just
felt
like,
it was
like,
real.
I'm happier as Lizard Man, so everyone's gonna be happy, Lizard Man. That was big brain energy.
I felt like this is a Sony meeting, is like, and so he's going after Oscorp because they fired him. You need to have him go after entire New York City. People are not just going to buy him just going to have Oz Corporation. Well, we can do that in the sequel to make it bigger. No. New York City's got to go after all New York City because people are not going to buy this film if he just goes after Oz Corporation. Well, that's just me using my common sense. All right. That finishes that film. And of course, like I said, the Dennis Leary thing connects, so we have a reason to continue Gwen Stacy's and Peter Parker's relationship. So that, and then at the end, she comes in and tells him, why aren't you there? Blah, 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 blah. And he says, because your dad made me promise, and I gave him a pinky promise and everything. And then at the end, they're in school, and he like mentions something to her, and then they're back together again. And then the credits.
I thought that was a dumb way to like reconnect it. Honestly, I didn't like that as much. They could have done anything else. That was such an easy write-off to just be like, oh, we'll just, he'll be late to class, and then it'll be cute, and she'll smile, and it'll be the end of the movie, and they'll love that.
Yeah, see, my thing is, I would have ended right when he said, I can't see you no more. And then you got the second one set up, right?
Yeah.
That's the way sequels work, right?
Yeah.
I'm just, I don't know. I've seen a lot of sequels, and I'm,
they wanted a feel good ending.
It's like, it's almost good.
Yeah.
There's this, they're sitting at the table. Well, what if this movie flops? Then there wouldn't be like some sort of settling of the ending. So we need to make them think that they're going to get back together. Yeah, you're right. We better write this in. No, this movie wasn't going to flop. It was a guaranteed success no matter what. So you got the second one set up. And again, here's where we fall in some problems and some good things at the same time. Again, now we know at the beginning, which is this is so silly. So you get them back together at the beginning of the second film, right? Then what does the writers do? Let's tear them apart again.
I feel like that's kind of this whole next movie is them being like, I want to be with you. Just kidding. Actually, I'm traumatized. But actually, I don't care that I'm traumatized, but I'm still traumatized.
No, it's like, hands up, hands up, hands up. Give me high fives. Psych. You thought I was going to get together with you, but you were wrong. You were so wrong. But yeah, you got to have that to kind of get people's attention and
Did
interest.
you know, my friend told me, I don't know if this is true, but
Yeah.
I think it's true because I don't know why it wouldn't be. But my friend said that Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were actually dating through these movies.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
If they
I
did,
think
they would be a boring couple.
I knew you were gonna say that's so funny because I think it is true because after he told me like after we watched the first movie we were going to watch a second movie, and in the second movie there's so many shots of him like laying in bed looking at like all the things around his room,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of like very real pictures of them together, just
Yeah.
pictures and
Could
stuff.
be,
So
could be. I've been looking at some of the stuff. That's what things I did find out while I was
What?
looking in this, that the suit was so tight on him when he first wore it that he cried.
What?
Yeah, that was.
That he cried?
Yeah, I can see.
So what they do? Did they make it bigger?
I'm just going. Some actors like to suffer for their art. So, all right. So,
are you lying? Is that really a thing?
that was what I read. It was either that he was just emotional that the suit was,
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't know, but that's interesting.
Well, here's what I'll give them on the second one. Let's get some of the positive things. I like the fact that they connect the two movies together. Good for them. I like the opening with some people have problem with the Peter Parker's appearance, but it's like that's part of Ultimate Spider-Man. That's what they did. Like that was the whole thing that made it different from
I wish they had
Amazing
called it Ultimate Spider-Man.
They should have, because I think it would have probably like clean up a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
It's like here's what the deal was. Spider-Man was such a popular book. Nerd alert. He was such a popular book that he had like 4 books coming out once a month. You had Peter Parker Spectacular, Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, and I think Ultimate Spider-Man. So there were like 4 books coming out, and each was in a different, like Peter Parker Spectacular dealt with more stories about him being Peter Parker. So the stories would be like he had to pay the rent that month, and how would he be able to pay the rent that month? So things like that. And that's what we liked about Peter Parker, because Peter Parker had real problems. Mm-hmm. Like Clark Kent and Superman, there was no real problems there. Like Peter Parker faced like Aunt May would get sick and he have to pay the medical bills, or Mary Jane is cheating on him or something, real problems that a kid or a college student would have, and then also be Spider-Man at the same time. That's the reason why we like him. And the things like Clark Kent, it never, which is Superman, if y'all didn't know about that, spoilers alert, Clark Kent, Superman, Clark Kent never had those problems. It would never be like his boss. Perry White loved Clark Kent. Here's the fastest typist in the world. Jonah Jameson hated Spider-Man, and he hated Peter Parker. So it was like, but you know what? Our boss hating us, that's something we can relate to. Our boss liking us, that's nothing no one can relate to. It's like, Jonah Jameson. And that's another thing too, is like there's no Jonah Jameson in this. That's another thing too. I thought that was kind of, again, and it could be the fact that Marvel wasn't letting them use Jonah Jameson, because I think there's a little, because here's the whole thing. Sony's trying to hold on to a franchise that they were going to lose, obviously. So it was like, we're going to put Jonah Jameson. No, you're not. If you do, we're going to sue you, because Jonah Jameson is on. I mean, they were just doing everything in the world to get their property back, and rightfully so. So there's no Jonah Jameson in this. And so that's, like I said, the relationship of that's another thing too, reason why Peter Parker just doesn't work for me in this. He's,
I liked the trying desperately to hold down a job Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Exactly. Like, sorry, your pizzas are late. I was literally saving New York. Like,
exactly. That's one thing I do. But like I said, when Andrew Garfield puts on the outfit, though, I'm lit up. I love him as a Spider-Man. He's funny. He's even though some of the dad jokes are even in there, they're funny, whatever have you. So so we connect the first two with Peter Parker's parents, deal with it. So and I'm okay with it. I'm fine with all that. Some of the things also too I like is they add science. Why? Because Peter Parker is going to college to be a scientist. Spoilers alert. He's not going to be a professional photographer. And that's just a job to pay his bills. What he wants to be in real life is a
scientist.
Right. So that whether I agree with some of the electrical science things, and we'll not get into that or not, at least they put that in there. So getting to the introduction, how do you like the introduction in this? Is it better than the first one or the second one? I think the second one did all right with the introduction.
I don't remember the introduction, I'm going to be honest.
Well, it's basically connecting the two movies together. Okay, so let's get into this villain. Jamie Foxx, let's get it out. He's one of the funniest people in the world. He's also a good actor. Obviously, we saw Collateral with Tom Cruise. He did Django. No, not as a Jim Carrey Electro. This just did not work for me.
Aww. My friend who I rewatched these with also said the similar thing, and I was like, I love him though.
Yeah. But I mean, did you not cringe when they did the Jim Carrey thing though a little bit? Because you've watched Batman Forever.
Well, yeah, but I didn't feel it was very Jim Carrey. I felt like it was more of like this guy who's down on his luck, and then like it makes sense that I don't want to say it makes sense that he would like obsess over Spider-Man, but like I just think his character was believable, as like Jim Carrey-esque as it may have been played out to be. I related to that guy. I was like, you go, guy, happy birthday.
And that's the problem. I mean, two things you get. Like I said, you go for the Jim Carrey thing. Number two, it's definitely not canon, as we know. And I'm going to show you a picture here and get this out of the way. See, these are some of the villains that Spider-Man dealt with in the 70s and 80s. See them?
Yeah.
Okay, you got the Tarantula, Green Goblin, the Looter, which is now Antifa pretty much when you go to Oregon. But you got the Tinkerer, the Tinkerer, the Light Master.
Oh boy.
The Spider-Man Sandman. Of course, we saw him in the third one. Okay, here's the Jackal. All right, you got the Grizzly, the Ringmaster. That would be a fun one. All right, and there's Electro.
Oh, that's a little different from the hoodie they gave him.
There's a Crime Master and the Silver Mane. I don't know what the Silver Mane does, but he don't even look threatening. All right, and we'll go back to this. Do you know where if you ever hear me use the word terminology thug, you ever heard me say that, the word thug?
I don't really remember.
Okay, well, do you know where I get that from?
Mm-mm.
The first time I heard it was from Spider-Man comic books. And when Spider-Man is dealing with what they call thug villains, those are villains like the Shocker and Electro and that people like that. They basically just rob banks. They're broke villains who just like robbing banks. And that's basically what Electro is. He had a little electric power, but he really wasn't that threatening, but they call them thug villains. And there was Scorpion and that kind of thing. Now, then he had bigger villains like the Kingpin. The Kingpin was rich and he was mastermind and he was strong, and he would hire like probably someone like Electro or Shocker to go and kill Spider-Man. So they never were like really major players in the Spider-Man quote unquote universe back in those days. Because you had people like Mysterio and Kingpin, who was utilizing them, and if you had a Spider-Man adventure, but I just thought I'd go over it. That's what I thought of when I thought of Electro. So seeing Jamie Foxx, which by the way, some great CGI effects and real effects here made him look really good and everything, but still, it's just like it's not very canon.
My friend called him Dubstep Man because every time he was on screen, they'd play dubstep music.
Yeah, that was kind of the same thing when you watch Doomsday and the Justice League movie. They've got a techno bar that's following them all the way around. But anyways, we'll not get into that. So there you go, folks. So Jamie Foxx plays this character, and I just, like I said, it was just a hard sell for me. So with that, and again, like I said, I like when he's on screen with Spider-Man. That's fine. I like, so regarding that, what's your take on Little Electro thing?
I liked him. Whenever the very first Spider-Man movie came out, I was 5 years old. So I never really went back to read any of the comics. So every time one of these movies came out, it was fresh Spider-Man material for me. And I really enjoyed it. I wish they gave him a cooler costume, though, because I felt like he got robbed of that. But I really enjoyed the effects they used. I enjoyed the character was believable to me. And I liked him a lot.
Well, they obviously made him more of a major threat, which is nothing wrong with that. To keep your interest. I liked his outfit. I'll be honest with you. I just especially better than the disco 70s thing, because back in those days, they would go to Studio 54, wear their disco outfits, and then they'd put on their masks and go rob banks. And then Spider-Man would stop him because he's New York, right? You're going to Studio 54. You're in there, do your cocaine and disco, pick a little lady in red slit dress, and then you go out there and rob a bank, and the Spider-Man stops you. And that's the way it was every night for Spider-Man. Yeah, Electro and Shocker got in the club, but they went into jail the night afterwards trying to rob a bank, after doing cocaine and dancing with the hot ladies in Studio 54. But that's the way it was, man. It was the 70s and we loved it. Well, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you, but they loved it, and then they got caught, and it was like, Electro was down on the disco floor. I love the nightlife. I love the boogie on the disco floor.
He's a whole disco on his own.
Yeah, exactly. And then after doing a little cocaine, they was like, what do you want to do, Shocker? Let's go rob a bank, man. Yeah, let's go rob a bank. Let's go rob a bank. And so they go put their hoodies on, and they're out there in their little Electro outfit. And here comes Spider-Man, goes like, and he's like, I'll stop you. And he's beating Electro up. He said, oh, you left some on your nose. And Electro was like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Okay. And then he ended up in jail. Of course, he web him to the utility pole. And then because this cops didn't have to do any work, it was like, hey, we got another villain on the utility pole. He's webbed up there. And that's the way the stories were. And they were fun stories.
How did the police take the villains down off of the light posts? That's what I want to know.
Because all that was made by the Stark Industries, really strong titanium stuff. Good question. And I think what happened is the fire department came up with a special tool.
Yeah, the big ladder and a tool.
They called the fire department. Hey, got no way hanging up. The red's got to support the blue again, I guess. All right, get out there. Got another villain take off the utility pole again. We got shocked last time. You're going to do it. All right. And it's either from the utility pole or from Shocker. Shocker's like, I'm going to get you guys. You just wait. Till next time, Spider-Man. All right. So... yeah, I liked his outfit. I liked that he was a danger. Like I said, adding the science stuff, whether I agree with, electrical, what I was taught about electricity versus what they were taught. Because here's the whole thing is somewhere there's got to be grounding. Like the stairs thing, he's worried about them touching the pole sides. And I understand where you're going with that, bro. But the stairs, can do it. Were they wearing leather shoes? Were they wearing rubber soles? That's another thing you got to put into place too. But that's too much thinking. And this is Hollywood. We don't have that kind of time. So let's move on. Again, like I said, I hate Emma Stone worse in this one. Glad she died at the end.
Whoops. Spoiler alert.
All right, so trying to think. Okay, let me get my positives of this film. Like I said, I like the yaoi boy romance between the two characters, between Green Goblin Jr. and Peter Parker. I love that kind of thing. The only thing I didn't like was like when Spider-Man shows up and just was a real twat and goes and says, "I'm not giving your blood," and flies off. But that's okay. I forgave him for that. Other than that, it's pretty cool. I did like the closet scene between Gwen Stacy and Andrew Garfield. I love that part, even though, like I said, their chemistry. This is the only time when their chemistry really, really works. And I did like that part about it. I like the sciencey stuff. It was really cool. And then what else did I like about the film?
I felt like he was a lot more tech genius. They really played into that in these movies more so than like the other
like
Spider-Verses.
I like the sciencey stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your favorite of the film?
My favorite what?
Favorite part. I mean, what did you like about the film? What's your positives?
I liked that they I know it's in the comics, but I didn't watching the movies. I liked that they killed Gwen Stacy. I thought that was new. I thought that was like a big shocker factor thing that you don't really see in a lot of the superhero movies, I don't think,
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And it showed like the consequences of, what happened. The entire movie was, hey, I need to stay away from Gwen because I'm seeing Ghost Dad, and he told me to stay away from her because she could be hurt. And what happens? She dies. So I mean, I really liked that. I liked it a lot.
Well,
so yes, I guess that'd be my favorite part.
Yeah, that Gwen Stacy died. Well, I like that too for other reasons. Here's the thing: is like I said, and going back, spoilers alert: Gwen Stacy dies at the end because his little web hand couldn't catch her. So the web hand. Remember the web hand? I need to get the camera. The web hand.
I mean, it reaches her, but it just the force.
Yeah. Well, it hit the back of her head, basically. So, if you read the comic books, and my brother had the Gwen Stacy issue where she died. So I read that comic book over and over again, and I knew that she was going to die. And like I said, this comic book was written like 40 years prior to this film. And so if you're a minor fanboy, you knew her fate. And and I like the fact that they did pick someone else, because you couldn't redo Mary Jane ever again, because Kirsten Dunst pretty much owned that role pretty much. I think
they were she was too perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
The chemistry between them was really good.
And so that, well, I mean, they were just good. And I tell you, the only other person could have pulled off, like, who my pick would have been for Spider-Man when it first came out? Topher Grace. And it's so funny they end up being Venom.
That's funny.
And I think my theory is, and I cannot find this, is that they wanted Topher Grace, but he was in a contract with that 70s show. And one of the reasons why he wanted to leave that 70s show, because he could do movies, and he might have lost Spider-Man because he was in contract with that 70s show. That's my theory on that, because he would have been my first pick. I think everybody, when they saw him and Lauren's character on that show, everybody was thinking Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
So, wow. Interesting. That's really interesting.
And so, and you hate compare and contrast with these. Like I said, saying all this, I still enjoyed them. And even though there are negatives, the positives in some aspect, like I said, outweigh the negatives.
I think if there was no other Spider-Man movies to compare it to, it would be like absolutely amazing.
Well, that's the thing that you're dealing with. And I think a lot, because like I said, if I saw anything that was with Spider-Man, like we had the 77 show or the 76 show, and then you could watch it in reruns because they'd show it on TBS all the time when I was a kid in the 80s. So that was all we had, which was Harry Hamlin. And just to see Spider-Man in a costume was like a big deal. It's like a little kid looking at Santa Claus. If you saw somebody in a Spider-Man costume, you were just like, oh yeah, it's somebody in a Spider-Man costume. That's so cool. You wanted that to be a reality, like a real television show. So you were very receptive. So when the first theatrical movie came out, you were excited about it. You liked it. You rejoiced because of the fact that it was an actual Spider-Man movie that they, for 20 years, they were trying to make, but couldn't because of so many problems, because Marvel could not pitch it. And then if they did pitch it and somebody wanted to do it, they just couldn't understand the concept. It's amazing that Superman, the movie, got made with all the trouble they had with getting a Spider-Man movie. Can you explain that to me? It's like, why is it so easier to get a Superman movie made and harder to get a Spider-Man movie made?
I don't know. Maybe because it's copyright stuff. I'm not sure.
I would say popularity at the time.
Yeah.
Because you're talking 10 years. I mean, Marvel's most popular character was Spider-Man, obviously. But Superman is an iconic character where you feel like you owe the audience a Superman film or television series. I don't know. It's like, because it seems like, I think where Superman went downhill was like in the 60s because of the Batman TV series, which made comic books more campy again. And then nobody wanted Superman. And then the Superman musical came out, and it kind of stirred a little bit more interest. The thing is, with everybody hating on comic books at the time, the comic books got better writing because they were going for just comic book audiences. They weren't concerned about, because when the Batman series obviously hurt more adaptations to comic books, but then again, DC had champions with Batman TV series, the Wonder Woman TV series, and of course the Incredible Hulk TV series was a winner for Marvel. All these TV series did success, but that's still not the silver screen where the big bucks are, and then the Superman movie comes out, and it really gets people a little bit more focused on superheroes once again. And then people are more sitting back. Oh, now you got to be careful what you write because you want to get the movie audience in there as well. So whatever. Like I said, in my day, if someone dressed up like Spider-Man and made TV, I'm watching it because just to have something, to hang on.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you guys got everything from like Spider-Man cartoons, Spider-Man figurines, Spider-Man pop toys, Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Netflix streaming something or other. You've got something to appease everyone. In my day, you were lucky if you got anything that remotely mirrored the comic books. People, I say Gwen Stacy back in the 80s, people would go, who? Comic book fans were like, oh, the chick that died. Yeah, that's her. If you got that part right, I would have loved you. You'd be my best friend for life. We're playing the D&D games, and you are like my wingman right there, bro. Oh, Gwen Stacy died. Sit over here, bro. And because I don't know that many people that have that reference that she's the chick that died,
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're a Spider-Man fan. That's the only people who knew about it. It's like, did you know she died in the comic books?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's like I said, and the thing is, that's the only problem is because this is supposed to be the new Spider-Man, is again, you're referencing old Spider-Man when you're talking about Gwen Stacy. So there might have been a meeting where they said, we got to appease the old fans and the new fans. So let's put Gwen Stacy in it and that kind of thing. in my opinion, I think a lot of people felt that she came off too cold and that she just was not likable. And it's nothing personal against Emma Stone because I'm sure she's a great actress. You know, she'd make a good superheroine in the Marvel world. She'd make a good superheroine in the DC world. She might make a good Wonder Woman or whatever, but I just don't think she's cut out to be Kirsten Dunst or Kirsten Dunst. Or,
I don't think anyone could have
I mean,
rivaled her. So they made a good choice of choosing a different character.
yeah, and I agree with that. And it's like I said, I just don't think that if they were going to do Gwen Stacy, first of all, there's just not enough to know about Gwen Stacy. You're going to have to dive in the character more. And they could have done that at the beginning of the film and like have like newspaper clippings or saying how she was this super smart girl or something like that. That would be a great setup. But it just like they just throw her in there and you're like, what the fudge?
Yeah, watching it the first time, I didn't catch anything. Yeah. Like watching it the second time around, it started to kind of hit that like, oh, she works with the Oscorp, she's going for the scholarship, but it wasn't very prominent. You know, it was just kind of it was just kind of no big deal, nonchalant. This is what she's up to right now.
And like I said, I can blame the writers on that. I can't really, I'm not going to blame the actress because, you know, they got to do what they got to read what they're told to read, you know?
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're Shakespeare trained, if it's, I mean, like I said, when you get to the closet part, that's finally where you really develop a connection with her and him. And there should have been, the connection should have been in the first one when they were in the bedroom, but it just, to me, is like, she's not the let the boyfriend in the window type.
No, I didn't like that part either. It was just very uncomfortable because it felt, like it didn't belong there. It didn't belong in that movie.
But when she's sitting there, you know, like having a little joke with her dad, I love that part. That looked good. That was Dennis Leary and her just really connected to me, like the father and daughter. That I got. That I was so too, but it was like, and then again, too, here's another thing too. Peter Parker's not the visit the girl in the window type either. I think my personal opinion, and see if I'm wrong on this, like here's my thing. I would never, ever, as a teenager, visit a girl through her window unless.
No, that's so creepy.
It's like, and I think that's the problem. It gives like and it's a shame because here's a character who we like. You shouldn't give him this like vibes of, like you said, creepiness, you know.
I think what they were trying to do, I think they were trying to mean well. They were trying to mirror the whole how Spider-Man in the first films visits through windows and things like that, which like but it was such a different vibe. And it was also like we run into the issue of each Spider-Man is younger again. And
their relationship wasn't at that level yet.
No, definitely not.
Because like if you watch the Scream movie and the guy does it, well, he turns out to be the killer in the movie. Well, so it makes sense that he's going to visit the girl through the window.
And at first, she's like, how did you get up here? And he's like, oh, I climbed 23 stories up the safety ladder. Like, dude, like, you really just going to tell her you're Spider-Man right now kind of thing?
And that's the whole thing, too, is like, as Peter Parker, like you said, he's awkward, in my opinion. I think it's not something that because he took him years to confess his love to Mary Jane. He's not going to, here we are like talking about one scene and dragging out, but it's the truth. Kind of ruins the character because like it takes him years to confess his love to Mary Jane, right? So he's not that type of person to do something that spontaneous. All right. That's my biggest issue with it. Like I said, he was just too cool to be like that Peter, like he portrayed a more cooler Peter Parker. And I feel like Peter Parker's more like us. He's more standoffish. He's more into books. You're going to have to get into his mind to arouse him, kind of guy.
At least a little more calculated in thought to not go visit a girl at her window when she invites you over for dinner.
And when her dad's a cop.
Yeah,
That.
that's a big factor as well.
And I didn't want to go into that part, but that's another thing too, is dad's a cop and he's not thinking that somebody's in the room with her. My daddy sense is going off. Boop, 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 boop,
Yikes.
boop, boop. All right, we're done here. All right. Like I said, I'll be honest with you. They're enjoyable. And I'll say this. I'm going to say this right out here. There's not a Spider-Man film I could not pick apart. All right, let's be honest, because there's problems I have with all of them. But the thing is, there's so much Spider-Man that's written that you can take from the good from every version of Spider-Man, right? So if you, with that being said, these are not that bad of films. They're still enjoyable. You can eat your popcorn, eat your pizza, and still enjoy them. I would recommend you watch them. I really would, with an open mind. Get it out of the way. Or if you're watching Spider-Man for Spider-Man, this is the film for you. If you're watching for Peter Parker, who cares? If you're watching for Spider-Man to be Spider-Man, then these films are for you.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think if you're looking for Spider-Man action and stuff, this is a good film. Peter Parker-esque, definitely the Tobey ones. And when it comes to the Tom Holland films, it's all the flashy Stark. Stark supports me. Spider-Man is him.
Again, and like I said, when you get into the Spider-Man books, you're going to have to take one. If you're writing a Spider-Man, which Spider-Man would you write? Like for a movie, which would you go?
I don't know enough about the books to be able to make that call.
Yeah,
I wish I did, but I'm not there.
You know where I would go start with?
Huh.
Peter Parker Spectacular.
Yeah.
Like where there's Peter Parker stories, and then when people bitch and moan, I would say, no, they're for the Peter Parker Spectacular crowd, not for Ultimate Spider-Man crowd. It's like with Batman, there's so many Batmans, I'm going to go with the Frank Miller's where he's having sex with the female Robin ones before I would with the male, whatever you want to do, but it's like, it's up to you. But it's a good story. He's a middle-aged Batman having sex with a 20-year-old girl who's Robin with red hair. That's fine. Goth girl. More like a punk girl. She's a punk girl.
All right.
Don't know where to touch on that. All right, we're done here, you guys. Gonna split this up, get it going. We want to thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, and sharing. This will be on our new Coconut Daddy Productions channel.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,